Annyeonghaseyo, this is meowmurai. Let's continue our game of Despera Drops running on Nintendo Switch 2.
世界のすべてを盗んであげるよ。
ぼさっとしてると置いてくぞ。これでいいのか?
Germany, Constance, July 27th, 2028, 7:51 Thursday, Resort Hotel. The alarm I'd set slowly dragged me out of my sleep. It's been so long since I've dreamed of my mom. Rubbing at my eyes in a daze, I sat up. It was the first time I'd felt well rested in a while. My head felt clear. When I looked at the bed next to mine, Sally wasn't there. Sally's already awake. That's pretty rare. But if that was the case, the area outside the bedroom was oddly quiet. Had Sally gone out shopping? Maybe everyone else was just waking up too. My mind went in a few directions as I washed up before walking into the living room. No one was there. Only the TV was left on.
フランス警察の発表については不審な点も多く、番組では独自の調査を続けており。
The sound of the TV was the only echo in the silent room. A bad feeling rose within me at the scene. I turned off the TV and called out their names as I checked the rooms one by one. Ash wasn't here. Neither was Gib. Nor Hamiel, nor Camus. Nor Bram, nor Sally. Every single room was empty. The others were nowhere to be found. What's going on? Fighting my anxiety, I figured that they were all still somewhere nearby. For example, maybe they woke up early and went out to have fun or shop for food. They were most certainly going to come back right away. I pictured them grumbling about overspending on their way back as I sent them each a text. But no matter how long I waited, I got no reply. My uneasiness only grew, and I went down to the front desk to ask if there were any messages left for me. But there weren't. Instead, I learned that the car and bike had gone out and they had paid the room charges for tonight and tomorrow in advance. Why? Desperate for clues, I searched around our suite once again, and that was when I discovered a single note. Stay put. That was the only sentence written on it. At least they weren't words of farewell. However, it only made me more anxious to wonder why they had left me behind, if it wasn't to abandon me. Really, where would they go? Stay put was a strange message. It wasn't what you'd write if you planned to return anytime soon. My heart sank. I was so restless to act, but how was I supposed to locate everyone? Deciding I should try calling again, I opened my cell, and the call history last night caught my eye. I remembered the call from Carlos. He had claimed that he had helped the others and said that if I came across any trouble, I should contact him. He was the only lead left. I called him. After a few rings, he picked up.
ジョーちゃんかい? 実は今ちょっとタイミングが悪くてさ、急ぎじゃなければ後でもいいかい?
皆さんがいなくて、カルロスさん、どこにいるか知りませんか?
ああ、その話ならまた後で。
おい、借りは返したぞ。って何電話してんだ。城の連中にバレたらどうする?
放っておけ。早く終わらせるとしよう。
みんなが一緒にいるんですか?
悪い、取り込み中だ。またな。
He ended the call, leaving me with only more questions. I was paralyzed, still holding the phone to my ear. They had been distant, but the voices on the other end of the call were unmistakably Hamiel and Gib. Hamiel had said they repaid a favor. Was that referring to Carlos's help with locating me, like the journalist told me last night? No, the most important question is, what was that about rogues in the castle? Only one place came to mind, the castle where I had been imprisoned. Does that mean that everyone is at the castle again? But why? What came to the front of my mind were the cheerful faces of yesterday, the heartwarming memory of a single peaceful evening. I'd seen a warm gaze, more gentle than usual. In that expression had also been a kind of determination.
全部終わったらまたここに遊びに来ようよ。今度は人目も気にしないで。
The memory played back, those words, those eyes. Had they already decided to infiltrate the castle then, to put an end to everything? But they were oblivious to how ruthless Chancellor's heart was. Just the thought of it made a chill run down my spine. If they were really there, I ached to save them, but what could I even do? I wanted to rush out of the room and sprint all the way there, but it was just yesterday that I promised not to run into danger and sacrifice myself anymore. Yet if anyone gets captured by Chancellor, they will... A man with such cold-hearted emotions would certainly murder those he deemed a hindrance without batting an eye, just like how he killed Mr. Hartfield. Everyone could be killed in cold blood. If that came to pass, I would never be able to forgive myself for not acting now. I tried calling him again, but Carlos didn't answer. One of the others might have replied to me. I opened up my messages. The name at the top made me pause. Rebecca Rosso. While I'd been held in captivity at the castle, I received several worried texts from her. She felt responsible for how I'd been kidnapped before her eyes. She had sent one sincere message after another, wishing for my safety. As a newscaster who chased after the absolute truth, would she still take an interest in that enigmatic castle? I decided to gamble on her curiosity and the pride she took in her work. 30 minutes later, Germany, Constance, July 27, 2028, 9:19, Thursday, streets. I met up with Rebecca as she dismounted her motorcycle in the streets of Constance.
よかった。無事だったのね。
レベッカさん、よかったです。近くにいらしてて。
偶然まさかこのレベッカ・ロッソが事件の気配を見逃すわけないでしょ。
I mean, is Rebecca part of the conspiracy? It seems awful convenient.
なんて冗談よ。実は昨晩のうちにカルロスってジャーナリストに呼び出されて近くまで来てたのよ。できる限りあなたたち7人の情報が欲しい。代わりに天峰さんの消息を教えるなんて言われてね。昨晩は電話で無事を確認したっていうだけで全然あなたたちの居場所を教えてくれなかったけれど、こんな近くにいたなんて本当は知っていたのかしら。
そんなことが。
I felt an indescribable anxiety hearing the breadth of Carlos' movements, or involvement. It seemed that Carlos had called me last night just so that he could exchange information with Rebecca. However, considering that he wanted our information and gave the others clues about the castle, my doubts about him only grew. Who in the world was he? It sounded like my friends had returned to the castle together with that man. Were they going to be all right?
だから直接連絡くれて嬉しいわ。それであの後何があったの？よければ話を聞かせてちょうだい。
We headed to Rebecca's hotel so that we could be out of sight before I shared information with her. I told her what happened to me at the castle and how everyone had come to rescue me despite the risks, and now they seem to have gone to the castle again. After I finished my explanation, Rebecca fell into deep thought.
へえ、さらわれたあなたを助けに来るなんて王子様みたいじゃない。てっきり可愛い女の子をたぶらかす悪い犯罪者だと思ってたんだけど、やるわね。
もしみんなが危ない場所にいるなら少しでもいいから助けになりたいんです。それで。
オーケー、私に任せなさい。一緒に彼らの助けになる方法を考えましょう。でもまずはそのハイリガーと呼ばれてた女の子の特徴を聞いていいかしら。事件性が高そうだもの、急いで調べた方が良さそうだわ。
はい、髪は薄いブロンドで。
Listening rapidly to the description I gave her, Rebecca searched something on her laptop.
どう？この中にいるかしら。
I looked over rows of children's photos one by one. However, Crystal wasn't among them.
いえ、いないみたいです。
そう。行方不明事件のデータベースにアクセスしてみたんだけど、特に誘拐ってわけじゃないのかしら。となると、近親者かしら。怪しい団体が子供を教祖に据えてって話は世界各地でよくあるし。
怪しい団体？
だって古城を拠点にしているんでしょ。こんな現代に山奥の城を拠点とするなんて ちょっと秘密結社めいてると思わない？古城って維持費や修繕費もバカにならないし、必ずしも快適で機能的とも言えないし、住居として使うにはかなり大変って話なのよ。何か特別な理由でもない限り、好き好んでそんな場所を使う必要はないはずよ。
She makes a good point. I had been overwhelmed by the circumstances at the time. Now that Rebecca pointed it out, I recognize how strange using a castle was. They'd once functioned as strongholds, but I vaguely remembered learning in my uni history lectures that medieval castles weren't suited for long-term living.
でも、もし何らかの組織だったら、関係者の情報にたどり着けるはずなのよね。でも、特に見当たらないし。
Rebecca was tilting her head as she scoured through databases. Eventually, she sighed and shook her head.
さすがにネットにはないか。できれば、相手について情報を集めたかったんだけど、この間の二人組の写真も盗まれちゃったし、参ったわね。
盗まれた？まさかハウススチュワードとチャイルドナースの写真がですか？
ええ、バックアップデータも全部ダメ。完全に消されてたわ。おまけに、あなたに殺人の容疑がかかっていたあの殺人事件について調べていたデータまで全部消されたわ。でもこれでよくわかった。あの殺人事件を起こした犯人たちがどれほど真実を隠したがっているか。そしてあなたをどれだけ無実の罪に陥れたいかがね。
消されたデータはどんなものだったんですか？
殺人の被害者は本来存在しないことになっている。そんな情報よ。
ハートフィールドさんが？
ええ。身元を確認した警官らによると、身分証の照合をしても DNA 鑑定をしても顔や歯型からも彼の身元は判明しなかったそうよ。その後被害者の死体はどこかへ引き渡されて、そのまま行方知れずになったみたい。鑑識にも箝口令が敷かれたって。身元不明の消えた死体と異常な箝口令に、あのドルチェって捜査官も何かあると思ったのね。だからあなたに司法取引を持ちかけたんだと思うわ。
そうだったんですね。
まあ、と言ってもあの二人組の捜査官も信用できるかわからないけれどね。ああ、でも私は信用して。ああいう権力に屈するのは嫌いなの。だから忠告メッセージも無視したのよ。
忠告メッセージですか？
ええ、差出人不明のメッセージよ。ただ深入りするなって書かれていたわ。余計燃えるじゃない。
Defiance burning in her eyes, Rebecca grinned at me. It was written on her face that she wanted to investigate this case with everything she had.
真実を知るな、報道するな、なんて、このレベッカ・ロストには逆効果よ。というわけで、この件の重要参考人が自ら連絡してくれるなんて、私としても最高に嬉しいわけ。だから、彼らを助けたいなら協力するわ。
レベッカさん、ありがとうございます。
私もあなたをさらった相手が何者か知りたいもの。そのクリステルって女の子のことも見過ごせないしね。でもその代わりと言ったらなんだけど、無事に彼らが戻ってきたら今度こそ彼らの取材もさせてもらえないかしら。城で見たもの、聞いたものを聞いて、彼らがこの事件とどう関係しているのか、罪状がどこまで本当かきちんと確認するためにね。ま、彼らの方はあなたと違って本物の犯罪者だと思うけれど。
I knew that everyone would be uncomfortable talking about their crimes. This wasn't something I could answer on their behalf without permission.
すみません。自分自身のことならともかく、彼らに協力させるなんて約束はできません。
New ally time? Well, I guess we'll see, huh? Perhaps agreeing just to placate her right now was the smarter choice, but it would be discourteous to her when she was so willing to help me.
普通こういう時って嘘でも分かったって言わない？
Rebecca stared at me, looking a little exasperated.
でも彼らが嫌だと言えば約束を破ることになりますから。
じゃあこうしましょう。あなたから彼らに取材の交渉をしてくれない？その結果断られたら私も諦めるわ。
それでよければお願いします。
交渉成立ね。
She offered her hand with a smile, and I shook it firmly. What I felt from her wasn't goodwill. I could only sense curiosity and ambition. She had spoken honestly. Her heart wanted to dig out the truth. I took it to mean that I was in good hands. In the back of my mind, I thought about how I could make use of that ambition. Oh, I forgot she didn't have her gloves anymore.
じゃあ肝心の方法なんだけど。
Just as we were about to discuss what we could do, I received a call. I frowned at the screen until I realized it was from the hotel. I'd asked them to contact me if they heard any news, and they said they'd call from this number.
ごめんなさい。出ていいですか？
ええ、もちろん。
失礼いたします。お客様は今どちらにいらっしゃいますでしょうか？
すみません。今外出中でして、私宛てに連絡があったんですか？
ああ、いえ。欧州警察の捜査官と名乗る方がお話をお伺いしたいと。
What? I nearly gasped, but I managed to hold it back. I never imagined that the police would discover our accommodation this quickly. Had Carlos tipped them off, perhaps? Or were there witness reports?
では、部屋でお待ちいただくようお伝えしてください。30分後には戻りますから。
I ended the call with a quick lie. Rebecca looked at me quizzically.
何があったの？
欧州警察が宿泊しているホテルに来たそうです。
そう。でもかえって好都合かもしれないわ。だって欧州警察は今はあなたの泊まってるホテルの部屋に釘付けになってるはずだもの。ということで、今すぐ部屋を出るわよ。一緒に行きましょう。
And that was how I ended up back in Rebecca's broadcasting van, driving to the castle to investigate. We made use of our travel time to cook up a plan. We would appear on a live broadcast, which we hoped would distract Chancellor. If I forced Chancellor to focus on us, it should make it easier for everyone else to do what they need to. For an instant, I thought I heard their voices whisper, "Don't jump into danger voluntarily." I told myself that this wasn't a risky deed. We were inside a van. There was no way for them to track me. It was at least safer than Constance, where Europol was lurking.
運転手付きの中継車をすぐに用意しろなんて、本当にレベッカさんは人使いが荒いんですから。
Luca, why is your voice so loud? So loud. Yeah, calm down, Luca.
カナレゼロのカメラマン。
Step
カナレゼロの
away from the damn microphone. My God.
走りながらの中継だからルカ君じゃ運転できないでしょ。とにかく特番スケジュールを急遽ねじ込んだんだから放送まであと5分よ。急いで。
Rebecca and Luca frantically did their preparations. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was time for the program to begin.
中継がつながります。3、2。
Luca finished the countdown with his fingers. The camera began rolling, and our broadcast went on air.
緊急スクープです。殺人容疑で指名手配をされていた天峰美香氏が当番組での中継中に行方不明となった事件についての続報です。フランス警察からは逃亡犯らの犯行と発表がありましたが、本人から虚偽であるとの申告がありました。実際に証言を聞いてみましょう。天峰さん。
The camera turned to me. Nervously, I spoke up.
はじめまして。天峰です。中継中に私をさらったのは 報道にあった6名ではありません。私を連れ去ったのは私に殺人の罪をかぶせた真犯人。私が目撃してしまった殺人事件の本当の犯人です。
I proceeded to relay as much information as possible to the TV. I wasn't responsible for the murder in Rome. I was only a witness. The police had given me a guilty verdict without having any evidence. The other 6 might be real criminals, but their recent crimes on the news, at least, were false. It was clear that the reports deviated from the facts. But like I said, I don't really trust Rebecca, if I'm going to be honest with you. Are we really broadcasting? I don't know. Then I explained that my rescues were none other than the 6 who'd been on the run with me.
彼女から真の犯人についての情報を入手した当番組は、犯人の潜伏先とされる場所へと向かっております。潜伏先はリヒテンシュタインの。
Suddenly, static darted across the screens. The next moment, it went completely dark.
レベッカさん、中継が遮断されました。
何ですって？
Why are they surprised?
基地局が電波を受け付けてません。
だったら衛星回線に切り替えてすぐに。
無理です。衛星が見つかりません。
Luca's horrified cry resounded in the van.
ちょっとそんなわけないでしょ。通信衛星が墜落でもしたっていうの？これは明らかに人為的な放送妨害だわ。
まさかチャンセラーたちが。
おそらくそうよ。よほどあちらさん、私たちに話されたくないみたいね。とにかく一刻も早く復旧させるのよ。到着したらすぐにレポートに入るんだから。
Hearing Rebecca's words, Luca frantically tried to restore communications. Then suddenly something showed up on one of the monitors.
おい、そっちはどうなってる？
無理だよ。あと10秒かかる。うわ、離せってば。
痛い。怖いよ。
くそ、応答しろ。
The footage showed that everyone was fighting, each of them hurt. Slowly, they were being cornered. Sally and Ram were already caught. The others were slowly but surely being driven to the wall.
何よ今の映像。ねえこれ私たちが向かってる城で合ってる？
はい。今の場所は私が捕まっていた城でした。
Yeah, it seems like Carlos is causing us trouble again.
じゃあまさに今こんなことがあの城の中で起きてるってわけ？
そうですか。でしたら発砲を許可します。彼らの代わりならいくらでもいますから、私に抗うのであれば生かしておいても意味がありません。
My comrades might all be murdered. Color drained from my face. Once again, a phone rang. This time, it was Rebecca's.
ああ、もうこの忙しい時に誰よ。ドルチェさん？
Rebecca answered the call and began talking to the inspector. He seemed to be asking where we were.
ええ、はい。彼女も一緒よ。はい。はい。今はリヒテンシュタインに入ったところで。
Apparently, Rebecca judged she couldn't lie to Europol, of all people. With this turn of events, the officers would likely come after us right away. The question was, would we reach the castle, or would Europol catch up first? The van screeched to a halt.
レベッカさん、到着したみたいです。
We made it. Liechtenstein, Unknown Castle, July 17th, 2028, high noon, Thursday, gate. I hopped out of the van, the castle right in front of my eyes. Gunshots rang out in the distance. We were entering an active battlefield. Before I could take another step, my phone chimed with a text. It was from Bishop. Attached to the text was Crystal's photo and a simple floor plan of the castle. Art thou the one to liberate the saint from her millennium prison? If so, I shall reveal thy path. Oh boy, okay. Saint, as in Heiliger, Paired with the attached image, the text must mean that if I intend to save Crystal, Bishop was willing to show me a way in. I might have been foolish to trust something like this, but Bishop had helped us out before in Milan, and so I replied, yes.
はい。では後で失礼します。
Yeah, I'm guessing one of the characters must have some superpower over communication. At least that's how I would explain it. Rebecca finished her conversation with Inspector Dulce as she got out of the van. She ended the call and gave me a pointed look.
欧州警察が1時間後には来るわ。あなたは同行するのよね。
Rebecca stared at me intently, and I looked back into her eyes steadily. Don't call me Shirley. I didn't reply. Rebecca's gaze turned apprehensive, but before she could say anything, the preparations for the live broadcast were complete.
レベッカさん、復旧しました。行きますよ。
ええ。いい？天峰さん。何かするつもりなら、私がここで引きつけていられる間にしてちょうだい。
はい。
Bishop sent me another text. This time, there were red dots on the map. There were 3 dots total. They likely indicated my friends who were caught, the ones still running, and Crystal's location. Yet another gunshot echoed out. Praying that everyone would make it out alive, I broke into a run towards the starting point of the route drawn on the map. Liechtenstein, Unknown Castle, July 27th, 2028, Thursday, 12:13. Passage. This place is following the map. I eventually ended up in a cavern connected to the underground of the castle. It looked like a centuries-old ruin. The path was a convoluted maze. I guess it had been designed as an escape route in case the residents were ever pursued by enemies. I advanced on, careful not to get lost. I heard a crunch beneath my foot when I accidentally stepped on something strange. Huh? I looked down, and what I saw were stark white bones. A terrified scream rose in my throat, and I hurriedly covered my mouth. What in the world was this passage's purpose? The way was so complex that if you made a single wrong turn, you might never find your path again. These bones might belong to someone who had gotten lost, trapped in this maze for eternity. Or were countless corpses tossed in here after murders, never getting a chance to be buried and rest in peace. I've got to find the others right away. I looked back on my map on my phone. According to the map, there should be a dot right above here, but I could probably get to the level above if I climbed the ladder nearby, but I didn't know what waited for me on the other side. Even if I tried contacting them, my comrades likely couldn't pick up. Plus, they'd be livid if they learned I was here. And so, I discreetly climbed the ladder and strained my ears at the top. I picked up the sound of people running.
侵入者1名確保しました。他1名についても現在ハウススチュワードが追跡中となります。そうか。ではチャンセラーの元に連れて行け。全員が揃ったら処刑をするそうだ。主のお命を狙った連中だ。手心は加えるな。
They'll be executed. If that wasn't bad enough, the agents accused them of attempted murder. My heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice. There was no way my friends would do that, right? Even if it was Chancellor, had they really tried to kill someone? No, stop. This isn't the time. I need to focus on rescuing them. Processing the truth of the situation could wait. Since they'd been captured, I was in a race against time. I listened carefully for a while, but the agents never left. Giving up on this exit, I climbed down the ladder and pressed on to another dot. I climbed up another ladder and clandestinely opened a trapdoor. After 10 minutes of navigating the underground maze, I finally made it inside the castle. The sunlight was dazzling as I slipped out into the corridor and closed the trapdoor back up. This was the moment Bishop chose to send a third text. I opened the attached map. One of the dots had moved. The others remained where they were. Does that mean the agents led everyone elsewhere? Or had Crystal gone somewhere else? Now both other dots were more or less the same distance from where I was. The agent earlier mentioned that House Steward was chasing one intruder. so the moving dot was probably one of my friends on the run. If I approached thoughtlessly, I'd get in their way. First, I should save those already captured. I began sneaking towards the next dot. Liechtenstein, Unknown Castle, July 27th, 2028, 12:33, Thursday, Crystal's room. It turned out to be inside a room with a splendid interior, a stark contrast with the other rooms. This room is... The walls and ceiling were coated completely by paintings. I paused in awe for a single moment. Some were grand depictions of historical scenes, and some were famous paintings that I'd seen in books. And then there was a noise on the other side of the room. Startled, I whipped my head to the source. It was Crystal. She looked at me with wide eyes.
おかしいな。この辺りで足音がしたと思ったんだが。
Well, I'm guessing Carlos directed them to the castle, and so they attempted to, get rid of Miko's problem.
万が一ハイリガーの部屋に潜り込んでいたらことだ。念のため確認しておくぞ。
Oh, we don't even know if this is actually a child. She may look like a child, but she may not actually be a child. I mean, this is a Japanese visual novel. Children are like 100 years old in some of the visual novels, so can't trust the physical appearance. If they came in now, they'd find me. I was flustered, but then Crystal clutched my skirt and pointed. No sooner had I hidden beneath her bed than the door opened.
入りがおかわりはありませんか?
I sensed Crystal nodding. Though the men entered the room, they hadn't gone as far as to peer under the bed.
ご無事で何よりです。ですが、部屋の鍵を閉めてお過ごしください。今、外は危険ですから。
I like how he says you need to lock the door while you're here, but then he's the one who opened the door. After checking on her safety, the men left and closed that door again. Once I was sure they were no longer nearby, I crawled out from under the bed.
ありがとう、クリステル。助かったよ。
Crystal stared hard at me. She slowly frowned, and the next moment she threw her arms around me.
クリステル。
The moment I touched her hand, emotions overwhelmed me. Her heart pleaded desperately for me to stay, so that she wouldn't be alone. Even without Bishop's request, I couldn't leave this girl behind in this place.
クリステル。私はあなたを外へ連れ出すために来たの。一緒に行こう。
Her face practically lit up like the sun. She nodded vigorously. After that, I led Crystal outside the room and returned to the underground maze. The passage was dim, and our footsteps echoed hauntingly. From time to time, Crystal would stop out of fear. I soothed her while I checked my phone. There was another text from Bishop. There was only one dot now. The last person had been captured. If I didn't do something soon, it would be too late. I ran as fast as I could with Crystal by my side. When I climbed the stairs closest to the dot, I found they led to the courtyard. Lifting a manhole cover, I carefully peered outside. There wasn't anyone around, but the courtyard was visible through the castle. If anyone was looking out a window, they'd spot me. I turned around to face Crystal. She was staring up at me, her hand clutching my skirt. For a moment, I debated leaving Crystal behind to check on the situation, but something told me that if I parted from her, I'd never see her again.
クリステル、音を立てないよう出られる？
She nodded with a solemn expression. I nodded back and climbed out into the courtyard. Liechtenstein, Unknown Castle, July 27th, 2028, 13:01, Thursday, courtyard. Topside, I spotted the silhouettes of my comrades immediately. on the other side of iron bars. I knocked on the window softly. My friends, who were all restrained, turned around and widened their eyes.
おいおい、なんでお前がここにいるんだ。
Up close, I could see that they were injured. Patches on their clothes were torn. I bit my lip, seeing how battered they were.
皆さんを助けに来たんです。すぐに行きますから、おとなしくしててください。
バカ、来るんじゃねえ。とっとと逃げろ。
Ash's voice was so feeble, it felt like a knife had pierced my chest. It made me all the more impatient. I could infiltrate the room from the barred windows, or I couldn't infiltrate the room from the barred windows. I had to get in the castle and open the door from inside. They were in the very room that I was held captive in before. I was sure the door would be locked just the same. But as I hesitated, unsure of how to proceed, I heard the click of a door. I ducked down and hid beneath the window with Crystal.
まさかあなたたちの方からここまで来るとはいささか予想外でした。
It was Chancellor's voice. The moment she heard him, Crystal's shoulders jolted. She was clearly afraid of the man. What has he done to her to make her react like this? I hugged her tight to help her calm down. Inside the room, Chancellor stepped unhurriedly, almost like a snake savoring his prey.
あなたたちがここに来る理由がわかりません。誰かに頼まれでもしたのですか？
その言いぶりじゃ、よほどあちこちから恨まれてるみたいじゃないか。その中の誰かかもしれないぜ。
なるほど。話すつもりはないということですか。
対話をするというならば、この拘束を取ったらどうだ。
そうだよ。サリー、こんなのやだもん。早く外してよ。
申し訳ありませんが、招かれざる客人にまで丁重なおもてなしをするほど人間ができておりませんので。
失礼いたします。コンサートマスターが応答しました。カナーレゼロのシステム制圧完了したとのことです。
Concert Master? That's a new name. I thought somebody had like a power.
わかりました。録画された映像はすべて処分させなさい。城の前にいる客人たちの対応はどうなっていますか？
いえ、それがまだ手間取っておりまして。
それなら警察を呼びなさい。アコライト以外には用はありません。マスコミには合法的に消えてもらいましょう。くれぐれも銃などは使わぬように。万が一アコライトに当たれば大変です。彼女の力は失うには大きすぎますからね。
かしこまりました。
この者たちを連れて行きなさい。背後に何者かがいるのであれば、どのような手段を使ってでも突き止めるのです。
はっ。
The agents took my comrades away with them. This can't be happening. They aren't taking orders from anyone. Chancellor was trying to force a non-existent answer out of them. I had to rescue them before they were forced to endure pointless torture. Running down a set of stairs, I paused at a lavishly decorated dagger on display. For an art piece, it was quite sharp. I pulled it off the wall. Crystal looked anxious, staring at the weapon in my hand. I hid it from her sight so that she wouldn't have to see it. I did wonder if something like this would be enough to rescue the others, but it was better than being unarmed. We continued our chase. Yeah, we really don't know how many people are in this group. I can't imagine there being that many more, though. Peering around the corner, I saw my friends being led forward by a crowd of agents. I observed them from the shadows. Though Chancellor wasn't present, they were surrounded by 10 or so brawny men.
ちょっと、そこつかまないでよ。
いたたた、もう少し緩めてくれませんか。
いいから黙って歩け。
殴るんじゃねえよ。
いつまでそうやって強がっていられるか見ものだな。
All my comrades had guns pointed at their backs as they walked. It looked impossible to find an opening to escape. I studied all the agents attentively. One of them was vaguely familiar. He might have been the man who tried to capture me in the past. If I rushed out there, he'd recognize me as Acolyte. A decorative dagger was the lone tool I possessed. There was only one method to choose that gave me a fraction of a chance at success.
クリステル、ここに隠れてて。
I know, too bad Camus didn't leave me a bomb or something. She looked uneasy. I patted her head gently before leaping out from my cover.
待ちなさい。
お前は。
With a start, the men stilled and turned around.
お前はアコライト。いつの間に城の中に。早く捕らえろ。チャンセラーに報告を。
動かないで。
I yelled as I pointed the dagger at my own throat.
彼らを離して。でないと、アコライトを失うわよ。
I gazed at my comrades. Ash, Hamill, Gib, Ram, Camus, Sally. I had full faith that they could make use of this distraction.
危ないからそれはやめろって。
おい、捕らえろ。急げ。
近寄らないで。本気よ。早くみんなを離して。
I pressed the tip of the dagger against my neck. The edge of the blade pushed down on my skin. Something slid down my neck like sweat.
やめろ。
お姉ちゃん、血が出てる。血。
Now pain prickled at my neck. I hadn't planned on actually getting injured, but the blood, however meager, was effective. Because after seeing it, the agents were convinced that I was dead serious.
わかった。わかったからその探検を下ろせ。今確認を。
連絡はしないで。早く。
The men put down the guns they had pressed against everyone's backs. Without a second's delay, Ash kicked with all his strength. They were swift. Hands cuffed behind their backs, Gib and Ash knocked down their captors with their legs alone. Receiving kicks to their temples and crotches, the agents dropped like flies. The men were all out cold on the ground within 10 seconds. They never stood a chance.
すげえ。やるじゃないか。
かっこいいですね。さすがです。
I know, I really like those two. But, you know, we're choosing to go with Ramu ending, so, you know.
ミカ、早く剣を下ろすんだ。
Hearing Gibbs' words, I belatedly realized that I was still holding the dagger against my neck. I frantically flung it onto the ground. Everyone shared a collective sigh of relief.
では、手錠の鍵を見つけてくれ。
はい。
I rummaged through the agent's pockets until I found a key and unlocked everyone's handcuffs one by one.
ようやく自由になりました。
Gib picked up one of the agent's guns and tucked it away.
お姉ちゃん、怖かったよ。
Sally threw her arms around me. With the immediate danger past, Crystal poked out her head.
クリステル、ごめんね。怖かったよね。
With Sally still glued to me, I reached out my hand. Just like Sally, Crystal rushed over and clung to me.
おい、なんだこの子供は。
もしかして以前話していた子供か。
As Gib and Hamiel studied her face, Crystal made a frightened gasp. She hugged me tighter. Seeing that, everyone traded glances. No one said anything. No one even suggested that we leave her behind. With resignation, Gib turned on his heel.
いろいろと言いたいことはあるが、まずは逃げるのが先だ。行くぞ。
We referenced Bishop's maps while we ran towards an exit. When we were together, it felt as if we were invincible. Gib and Ash knocked down the approaching enemies. Ram opened locked doors so effortlessly that I almost thought they never had locks in the first place. Hamiel made full use of his silver tongue to lead people astray, like the devil whispering into their ears. Camus cut off visibility with his smoke screens. While throwing our pursuers off kilter, we climbed down the underground maze and kept running. What time? Well, how much time does Hamiel have to con somebody, really? Liechtenstein, Unknown Castle, July 27, 2028, 1351, Thursday Gate. In the end, we managed to successfully escape from the castle without losing a single person on the way.
車は林に隠してある。急いで向かうぞ。
As I sprinted with the others, I happened to spot Rebecca and Luca. The pair rushed up to me.
天峰さん、よかった、無事で。
なんだか中からは爆発音が聞こえてくるし、心配してたんですよ。
レベッカさん、ルカさん、よかった。お二人も無事だったんですね。
あんたらがこいつを焚きつけた張本人か。
そんなとんでもない。彼女を焚きつけたのはレベッカさんで、僕は無関係ですから。
Possibly intimidated by the group's criminal status, Luca denied his involvement vigorously.
そんなご大層なカメラを担いで無関係かよ。
いや、これはただの商売道具でして、
勝手に撮られるのはいい気がしない。撮影は遠慮してもらおう。
I know, this must be an awful lot for Luca. Especially since he's gotten like so little time of the game so far. Luca hurriedly removed the camera from his shoulder.
ちょっとルカ君、報道カメラマンが少し文句を言われたくらいでカメラを下ろすってどういうことよ。
いや、この人たち本気で怖いですから、これ以上は無理ですって。
まったく情けないわね。何のために連れてきたと思ってるのよ。
なるほど。こいつを利用してスクープでも狙おうってことか。ご苦労なこったね。
利用しただなんて人聞きが悪いわね。あなたたちを救出するためにバッチリ協力したんだから、利害の一致ってやつよ。聞きたいことはたくさんあるけど、地元の警察だけじゃなく欧州警察まで来るわ。早くここを離脱しましょう。その後で取材させてちょうだい。
We parted with Rebecca for now and headed to where our vehicles were parked. On our way, I turned around to face everyone.
実はレベッカさんは皆さんの罪状について取材をしたいと言っています。彼女の取材に協力していただくことは可能ですか？
Abiding by my agreement with Rebecca, I tried to bring up the idea of the interview. But everyone grimaced in a way that was louder than words. Interview? Not happening.
そう言えと彼女に頼まれたのか。
はい。それがみんなを助けるのに協力してもらう条件でした。
そんなことを頼まれて、俺たちが「はいわかりました」と言うとでも思ったのか？
いえ、思ってませんでした。
分かってんじゃないか。悪いが取材は拒否させてもらう。逮捕につながる証言は取られたくないね。
俺も自分のことを話す趣味はね。
私もごめん被る。レベッカはともかくメディアは信用していない。
サリーもやだな。お仕事が減っちゃうもん。
僕も反対。僕にだって話したくないことはあるし。
僕もできれば遠慮したいです。今後の逃亡に影響が出そうですし。
I knew it. Honestly, I completely agreed with them. If we wanted to continue our life on the run together, if I wanted to protect the others, I had to run away with Rebecca, or from Rebecca right now. No matter what kind of terrible betrayal it was, I had to do it. I would keep running with my comrades. I hardened my resolve.
ジブさん、今のうちにレベッカさんの車のタイヤを打ち抜いてくれませんか？
I heard everyone gasp in unison. Gib let out a small chuckle.
言われずともやるつもりだ。先に乗っていてくれ。
はい。
I helped Crystal, who was nodding out of fatigue in the car before I climbed into the bike's sidecar. Gib opened the cabriolet's trunk, took out his rifle, and held it close to the ground. I'm sorry, Rebecca. Not wanting to avert my eyes from my own sins, I watched the target steadily. Following a booming gunshot, the van jerked and veered to one side. Pieces of rubber were tumbling in its wake. The driver parked and ran out to check the damage. I mean, yeah. This is like the second time we've shot at the van. Even with the blown-out tire, Rebecca and her crew weren't going to be stranded in the wild. The police would be arriving soon, so they'd get help. I silently bid farewell to the woman who trusted me and encouraged me to surrender. Then, someone straddled the bike. Oh,
とりあえず記録しておけ。
これで OK？
Yeah, I gave Rami the most points. I don't think it's enough to complete the game though, with a full bar. Who else haven't we written with? We haven't written with Gib. Let's ride with Gib. We were bound for Switzerland once again, making a beeline for Lugano. Since we managed to escape before the arrival of the police, there were no pursuers on our trail. We traveled peacefully without much traffic. Gibb's hair was more disheveled than usual, just one of the signs of how fierce his struggles were before I showed up at the castle.
君と一緒にいると予想もつかないことばかりが起きるな。
Gib had a wry smile that held a hint of warmth. It sank in that he really was safe now, and relief welled up in my heart.
私もです。あの城にまた行くなんて。ジブさんたちの捕まる動画がビショップから届いたとき、本当に心臓が止まるかと思ったんですからね。
yeah, France was a lot of trouble for us.
ビショップからそんなものが届いていたのか。だから君が。
はい。
When I watched those clips, I'd been terrified that I might lose my comrades forever. That was why the present was all the more precious to me.
本当に無事でよかったです。ジブさんが無事でよかった。
すまない。君に余計な心配はかけたくなかったのだが。失敗するとはな。我々の見通しが甘かったというわけか。
でもどうしてあそこへ。
我々を護送車に集めた相手だ。追う相手の情報をより詳細に知りたかった。というのが一番の理由だ。それに彼らさえいなくなれば本物の犯罪者である私と違って君は追われる理由がなくなる。国に戻れるだろう。
Something told me that it was the latter reason that had truly spurred him to action. After all, those agents mentioned an attempt on Chancellor's life. If he wanted information, targeting Chancellor was unnecessary. He had only to sneak in unnoticed, get his hands on the info, and come back. Gib had been concerned about my ability to endure this lifestyle and the fact that I was originally innocent. That must have been why he did it.
それに私の知りたい真実が関係している可能性があった。だから向かっただけだ。君は気にしなくていい。
Gib ended his explanation with what felt like an afterthought excuse, trying to alleviate the burden on me, but his grace was painful in its own way. They saved me, and I saved them. That cycle would continue as long as we continued as a group. Would there ever be a day when we could finally rest? If so, when? I didn't have an answer. For now, I only wanted to focus on celebrating that everyone was safe and sound. Oh no, who is this character? He's a new one.
喜びを歌いなさい。鎖が解き放たれる時は間もなくです。 力を貯めて待つのです。エンフォーサーよ。
Enforcer? Oh no. Chapter 11. Heilige. Switzerland, Lugano, July 27, 2028, 1802, Thursday. Hostel. A new hostel.
少し休憩しましょうか。
Okay, boy, things just keep happening in this game. there's like more and more characters. I thought we were done introducing new characters, but lo and behold, there's even more characters in this game. All right, why don't we stop it there? This is meowmurai. You've been watching Despera Drops, running on Nintendo Switch 2. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream. I know this gets more and more exciting. This never lets up once it starts.